Hello and welcome to this YouTube video all about building your own flashlight. Now I got this build a DIY flashlight pack from Ambessa, an amazing organisation that built this pack for young engineers, especially those in displaced situations such as refugees. And the whole idea is that if, as a displaced refugee, you may be out of your regular educational regime, and this will be a great way to learn about engineering hands-on by building your own DIY flashlight. And on the flip side, you build a flashlight which you can definitely use, especially if your situation is uncertain. And the way this model works is if you buy one, you basically buy included in that price, you send another one to a child in need. So it's an amazing organisation. So here is me basically unpacking, and you can see that I have taken out the instruction manual, and there's basically three main parts. You have all the little components. You have the plastic case that has a nice yellow holder as well, and then you've got this other side of the plastic case that's translucent. Okay, so I've unpacked everything and now I'm starting to build the DIY flashlight. And the first component I'm holding now is basically the generator, the motor, and is basically what allows you to give the flashlight some power. So I'm just popping it into its place, and I'm just following the instruction manual to do so, and just popping it in, and then does make a satisfying click once you've done that. And you can see there's two wires, there's a red wire and a blue wire, and this is very normal in electrical engineering, that there will be two different coloured wires to tell you that one side is positive and the other side is negative. So this kit's very conveniently colour coded where you should put the different types of wires. So I'm trying to put the red wire into the closest red switch holder place, and it is a bit difficult the first time I tried it. It took me a very long time. I have cut out a lot of time trying to put it in, and you know it's in firmly when once you put it in, the kind of click socket place kind of just goes down. As you can see, the other switches are up, but this one I've put in is down. And this is me moving on to the blue one, and again following the guide, popping it into its appropriate place. And yes, at this point I was still struggling, so here you can see me struggling to put in the blue wire as well. It does take a bit of trial and error, which is normal with engineering, but eventually I did get it in. So after I got it in and it was in place, I kind of just tidied it up a little bit using the plastic guides that are inbuilt into the plastic case, so you can kind of just tuck it into the little like rails that are built into the plastic case. And there you have it, finally done. And onto the next component, it was the light bulb, and similarly it has two wires, the red and blue, representing positive and negative. And following the guide and the instruction manual, I popped it in place and popped the red wire into its designated red socket area, and same with the blue wire. And yeah, again, took a bit of trial and error trying to put it in correctly, but eventually we got there. And it is finally done. Just double checking that it was as supposed to be according to the manual, and I move on to the next component, which is using the spare wire and basically checking that this bulb actually works, and basically a bit of a test circuit. So you pop the white wire into the two sockets with the white coded circle, and we are going to see if the light turns on. And to see if the light turns on, there's another component you have to add to this generator motor tool component. You just have to kind of slide it on and then twist, and as you can see, the light is turning on as you twist it, and it's basically converting kinetic energy. You actually moving this motor, and it's directly powering the light bulb, which is absolutely amazing because this this DIY flashlight we're building is completely green. You don't need any electricity at hand. You don't need any source of power. You just need kinetic energy and ability to turn this motor around, which is amazing, especially in the instance of a refugee child using this. Okay, on to the next component, we have our switch. Our switch, like the other components, have two wires, one shorter than the other, and we're just going to follow the instructions, pop it into place, making sure the short wire is closer to where the wires is. And I realised here that the spare wire had to come out because that is where you put the wires of the switch into the circuit. So first I had to remove the spare white wire, and then I proceeded to put the switch into place, and then use the white wires attached to it to put it into its white socket areas. And this is me just popping it in place, following the plastic kind of rails guide that was there to make sure that it doesn't move around and it is in place. So yeah, now I was in and I wanted to test the light would work with the switch now into the circuit. So I put on the case on top of this motor that's powering the light and turned it to see if it was to work, and I had to remember to turn on the switch, and working. So now we had the switch into the circuit, and when you turn off the switch, it doesn't work as you expect. And when you turn on the switch again, it works again. So we now know the circuit's working, the light bulb is working, and the switch is working. Perfect, perfect, perfect. And the next part was the capacitor and trying to put the capacitor into the circuit. So capacitor is a small electronic component that stores and releases electrical energy, kind of like a tiny rechargeable battery. And this is going to be the core component for this whole circuit, for this whole DIY flashlight, because this is basically how we don't need any batteries, any kind of source of electricity, because what is going to happen is we're going to generate electricity and it's going to be stored into this capacitor. So here is me putting the capacitor in, and again a little bit of a struggle, and you can see after a while I kind of bent it a little bit so that I bent the wires a little bit so it can fit into the sockets, but after a while it was put in place and everything was as it should be. Okay, and then it was time to test it again. Basically you have to test the light bulb works after each component put in, and I tried to test out if I can power the light bulb with this motor generator again now that I put the capacitor in, and I wasn't sure because I forgot whether I left the switch on and off, and I wasn't sure what the problem was, but it wasn't working. But I thought it was good to show this as well because this is a big part of being an engineer. Things go wrong, you kind of have to problem solve. What was the problem? Did I put the capacitor in wrong incorrectly? Maybe I forgot to turn on the switch. And so I started a series of problem solving, trying to figure out what went wrong. And what I figured out would be super helpful is having a bit of paper and writing down whether or not my switch was on or off, because it was a bit difficult to tell. And so I took out the capacitor to the circuit without any capacitor and just tested if the light was working again. and it was working, but I just had to make sure that I knew whether the switch was on and off. So I wrote down on and off depending on whether the light was turning on and off, and at this point it wasn't, so it was off. I wrote down it was off, and this is just me kind of testing it again. But I think for the next step, installing the capacitor, it was best to keep it off. So I wrote it down, it was off, turned it off, and now I know that the switch was off. So now I knew the switch was off, I went back to getting the capacitor and trying again, and this time I made sure to install the capacitor very slowly. And this is me just zooming into the capacitor because there's a lot of useful information about the capacitor. You can see it's a super capacitor if you look very closely. You have information about the module, for example, and you also have, if you look carefully, the voltage that it is capaciting at, which was 3 volts. So anyways, I go back to put in the capacitor, making sure the wires attached to it match the sockets that it goes in, and now I know definitely that the switch is off. And then I, did a bit of a trick where I kind of bended the wires just so it fits into the socket, because it was a bit difficult at first. So here's me just bending it just so it fits into the sockets a lot easier. So the capacitor was in. I went back to the instructions manual and realised that the switch had to be off, which it was, and then I had to turn it for about a minute, and then after a minute the light bulb should turn on by itself. And that's the whole purpose of this DIY switch. DIY flashlight, and it's just me using my tweezers to make sure it was in and testing it. So I was winding it up for about a minute. This is essentially converting kinetic energy, the movement of your hands, and it's going into your capacitor, and it's actually going to store this energy. Well, first it's going to transfer the kinetic energy into electrical energy, and then it's going to store the electrical energy into the capacitor. But you do have to store a bit of energy first, and it's me just winding it up for about a minute. So about a minute had passed, and I tested if it would work now. Turn on the switch, and there you go, it was working all by itself. And I guess me giving myself a bit of a round of applause. But as you can see, there is no battery in the circuit, there's no electrical supply. You essentially charged and powered this light bulb all through kinetic energy by turning that motor, which is amazing. So just to recap, you turn the motor, that's kinetic energy from you, it goes to the capacitor, it stores that as electrical energy, and when you turn on the switch, it turns on the light. And there you have a completely electrically powered free DIY flashlight that I built right in front of your eyes. And the next step was just essentially putting on the case. So I grabbed the case out of the Ambessa Play box, tried to figure out how it fits on to the rest of the DIY flashlight, and it was kind of obvious the circle, or the hole where the circle is, goes on top of where the motor was. So I clicked it in place, and there were 2 clicks at the bottom and at the top that kind of clicked the case and the rest of the DIY flashlight together. And then I grabbed the other component, which was part of the box, and you can see there's like a gap where there's like a oval shape, and I clicked it on top of this motor generator that powers a flashlight. And with this, if you understand physics, the concept of the topic in physics called torque or moment, and when you add this lever, which adds length, it makes it a lot easier to turn it around. And here I am turning it around and essentially charging up the capacitor that we just saw, so that when I turn on the switch, the light goes on. So the more you turn it, essentially the more kinetic energy you're producing, and the more electrical energy is stored in the capacitor. So I'm just turning it around, and then I test if it works, turn on the switch, and yes, it does. And there we have it. We have our DIY flashlight, all completely generated from your hands. And it's absolutely amazing. You can imagine that in a refugee camp or anyone who doesn't have access to electricity, this is an amazing innovation. You get to learn about engineering, learn a bit about capacitors, play with some wires. You have the fun part of kind of winding up your DIY flashlight, but most importantly, you do have that light, especially when it gets dark and if there's no access to electricity or power or light, you've got it here with you. And this is me just seeing how powerful it is when I turned off the lights. And yeah, it was quite powerful. Definitely powerful enough to read some, notes in the dark in case, some children wanted to read a book or do some studying. It's just an amazing innovation. So this is literally what I love about engineering, how creative it can be, how you can help so many people. And I really hope you love this video and you also are as enthusiastic about this innovation as I am. And definitely get your hands dirty and buy yourself a pack, remembering that every time you buy a pack, another free pack goes. You'll basically fund a pack to go to a refugee in need or a child in need. And I also wanted to test, after winding up for about a minute, how long the light lasts. And I actually did do a bit of experiment. And after leaving it on, after winding it up for 1 minute, the light lasts for about 10 minutes. And then after 10 minutes, it kind of gets a bit dark and then you have to wind it up again. And then it turns back on. So about 10 minutes you have after winding up for 1 minute. And yes, that is the end of this amazing video. This has been so exciting to play around with this Ambessa Play pack. If you found this interesting, comment down below. What else would you like to see? What you found interesting? And definitely share this to a friend who you think may want to play with their own DIY flashlight, or obviously get involved with the cause and support the initiative of building a DIY flashlight to a child in need. Thank you so much for watching this video, and don't forget to subscribe as it helps so much. Thank you so much for the people who subscribed already. We are trying to get to 1,000 subscribers this year and we are kind of on our way there, but we'll get there. But thank you so much. Have a nice day and keep engineering.